Everyone. My name is Michaelan Belgard from the American Indian Public Health Resource Center. Today, I have the pleasure of introducing Tahni Persian, who will be presenting the session titled Strengthening Tribal Engagement in Federal Pathways, Perspectives from a USDA Internship. Tahni Persian is a citizen of the Turtle Mountain Tribe and a recent MPH graduate, completed a summer internship at the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C. During her internship, she worked closely with internal mission areas to strengthen tribal engagement in nutrition and food sovereignty, and collaborated with cross-departmental team to develop, strengthen, and diversify the USDA's talent pipeline from interns to federal employees. Her experience with the federal government has provided her with a unique perspective on its operations and insights to the challenges of securing federal employment. Tahni will share her experience along with the tips for applying for federal internships and jobs. This webinar will be recorded publicly accessible. Recording will be available on the NDSU CHHS YouTube page for the following presentation. If there is time, Tahni will answer any questions at the end of the session. In the meantime, please feel free to type your questions in the chat box during the presentation. Tahni, I'll give it over to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you, Michaela, for that introduction. So I did have a little introduction as well, but I mean, I think you kind of touched on just about everything that I was gonna say. But hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining and taking time out of your day to listen to my presentation. So like Michaela had mentioned, I am Tahni Persian. So I'm a citizen of the Turtle Mountain Tribe, which I'm able to call the Turtle Mountains in Belcourt my home. I graduated last May with my master's in public health and community health science and maternal and child health. And then I recently began working as the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Project Manager for the American Indian Public Health Resource Center, which is a position funded by a USDA grant. And then for this, this role just feels like a full circle moment for me because as I had the opportunity to do my practicum with the center when I first received this grant. And then during that time, I helped develop the Indigenous Food Sovereignty Emerging Leaders Program with the center as well. And then now I manage the summer program. And then, taking that one step further, I had the privilege of interning with the same USDA team from this past summer. And now I work under them and collaborate with them regularly. So it just kind of shows how small and interconnected Indian country truly is. And then just a personal takeaway and advice to graduating students that things will always work out in very unexpected ways. So I know that graduating can be very scary, especially if you don't know what you'll be doing in a few months. Trust me, I was there, but there are so many opportunities that can be explored. So that's kind of a full circle moment for me. And yeah, we can get started. So Michaela, if you want to do next slide, please. So how I discovered my internship. So I discovered my internship opportunity while searching for tribal specific positions that would align with my academic background and career aspirations. So like many graduating students nearing the completion of their study, I faced uncertainties about my future career path. And as graduation approached, I was eager to find an opportunity that would allow me to apply my skills while contributing meaningful work to my community. And then I was fortunate to find the USDA Office of Tribal Relations, Tribal Agriculture, and Food Policy internship, which I felt was a good match for my interest and professional goals. So that's where I kind of just Googled. I was taking time to just search up keywords of things that I was interested in. So I would say like tribal internship, like food sovereignty. And so I just happened to come across this and I applied and, thankfully I was selected. So Michaela, if you can go next slide, please. And then a little bit on the overview of my internship role. While applying, upon applying, I was selected to work with the Office of Security Secretary, which I collaborated closely with the federal pathways team. And then my primary focus was on enhancing the USDA talent line pipeline, which is involving identifying and developing strategies to strengthen internships and employment pathways for students across various educational levels. So USDA is one of the biggest federal government organizations, and they hire over 200,000 people all over the country. So very big, and they have a lot of internship programs and programs that I think sometimes are untapped. And so they're really trying to diversify people coming into USDA and making the process easier, because applying for federal positions can be quite hard. And so they were looking at how to help with interns applying into federal positions, or just the public in general, because it is such a complex system, and it's very competitive. Michaela, next slide, please. So some of the core responsibilities. So I was able to do some research in policy development. So I was conducting comprehensive research on existing USDA internships and employment programs targeting high school, trade, undergraduate, graduate, and postgraduate students. So this research informed my recommendations on policies to enhance these initiatives and make them more accessible to diverse student populations. And then another thing that I had worked on was data analysis and reporting. So I analyzed internships and employment opportunities across various USDA mission areas. So USDA is so big. Like, USDA is not just agriculture. They have rural development, food and nutrition services, wildlife, forest services. So it's such a wide variety of different avenues that you can go in with USDA. So kind of really finding out what opportunities are laying for students. And then so with that, I help compile and synthesize the data to create a comprehensive master list, which included key resources and instructional videos on navigating USDA jobs, understanding federal pay scales, and exploring career advancements for the federal government. And then I also did a toolkit creation. So with that, I developed detailed toolkits that included data finding, videos, and resource materials to inform USDA staff and potential interns about federal pathways and available career opportunities. So these toolkits were shared widely within the agency and were designed to support both current and prospective students interested in federal careers. And then lastly, tribal representation in federal programs. So I was able to, my main focus in the internship was working on federal pathways, but I was able to kind of tailor my internship into some of my interests as well. And one of my interests, is food sovereignty and nutrition in tribal communities, helping alleviate food insecurity. So I was able to work with the USDA Food and Nutrition Services to help enhance tribal representation in USDA program outreach materials, such as like the flyers for a summer program, which is the summer electronic EBT program, which North Dakota does participate in. So I thought that this, being very specific with how we are tailoring these flyers to have representation. So this was ensuring that they included appropriate imagery and languages that represented tribal communities. Just for an example, like they had language in there that talked about like neighborhoods and, changing that into like tribal communities. And then making sure that it's more of like our community, not my community. So kind of just really playing around with language and being more inclusive and collective like that. And then flyers were also adapted to have photos of tribal families and children reflecting the population they're designed to serve, because the flyers had families that didn't look like tribal members. So I think that's really important, especially whenever you're creating these programs to help specific communities. I think taking the time to tailor and tailor for an audience can be really crucial. So, and those are just some of the projects that I had worked on within the few, I think 10 weeks that I was there. So that's just highlighting that. And then Michaela, if you can go to the next slide, please. So for networking and advocacy, so throughout the internship, I had invaluable the invaluable opportunity to engage with influential leaders and organizations in both federal and tribal sectors. So notable figures that I was able to interact with was USDA Secretary Tom Vilsack. So he oversees the entire USDA agency. So we were able to meet with him a few times and kind of talk about tribal issues. He was able to ask us questions. So we were just kind of learning, what are the next steps that USDA is looking to do with tribal communities, and how can we advocate for our own communities and things like that. So it was a really good session, and yeah, so it was really nice. And then another person that we had met with was Department of Interior Secretary Deb Holland and her team. So Deb Holland is a indigenous woman from, I believe, a pueblo in New Mexico, I believe. But she oversees the interior. So it was really inspirational to meet with her, just because she has done so much work for Indian country, and to see a powerful indigenous woman in this role, and managing a whole department, especially for young native students. It was really great. So we were able to talk with her, learn more about her personal life and what kind of drives her to do the work that she does, and the changes that she has made and changes that she would like to see in the future as well. So being able to meet with her was probably the highlight of my internship. And then we were also able to meet with, and I could point out, or I guess the top right photo, we were with White House tribal liaisons and the team that works for President Biden. So there's only 3 of them right now, but hopefully that continues to grow as we are able to collaborate more. And I know that there's great work being done in tribal communities at a federal level as well. So that was really great to learn about what they do and their capacity, and how what they hope to see from the federal government, how they're able to help tribes as well. And then we had the opportunity to also meet with the National Indian Health Board. And then so that's just advocating for tribal representation in federal spaces, and how we can further enhance public health in tribal communities. And then so these internships allowed me to advocate for tribal issues at a federal level and foster important relationships with individuals and organizations dedicated to improving outcomes for Indigenous communities. I also gained insight to the federal policy making process, and then particularly as it relates to tribal affairs, food security, and then agriculture. Michaelan, if you wanted to do next slide. So key lessons from my internship. So this internship reinforced the crucial importance of Indigenous representation within the federal government. My experience highlighted that Indigenous perspective. Just a second. Okay, never mind. Sorry. So sorry about that. My experience highlighted that Indigenous perspectives are essential to development of policy that effectively address the unique needs of Native communities. Furthermore, I gained a deeper understanding of the federal government structures, which is complex but offers tremendous opportunities for those that are able and willing to navigate it. So there are spaces for Indigenous people, and then and there needs to be more representation in these, but I'll get more to that. And then one of the most significant lessons I learned is the value of internships as a gateway to professional growth. As an intern, I was able to learn directly from federal professionals, receive mentorship, and gain hands-on experience that broadened my understanding of federal careers. Internships can provide an excellent platform to build networks that extend beyond the duration of the program and can lead to long-term professional relationships. As I had mentioned, full circle moment for me interning with the USDA, for me now working with the same USDA team, but also working with NDSU as well. So it just kind of shows how interconnected life can really be in full circle moments. And then DC. So Washington, DC may seem very intimidating, but the USDA Office of Tribal Relations offers a supportive environment where you can directly contribute to issues that matter to tribal communities. So I encourage anyone with a passion for agriculture, food policy, or tribal advocacy to consider these type of internships. Your lived experiences, regardless if you have prior legal or policy experience, or even if you're just interested in general, and maybe are uncertain, but like you've always had an interest in, food and agriculture and things like that. They're valuable assets that can bring fresh perspectives to the federal government. And then finally, as an Indigenous person, the network within Indian country is relatively tight knit, particularly in spaces like Washington D.C. So these individuals that you meet in these environments often reappear in your future endeavors. So, and sometimes in an unexpected way. So it's always crucial to leave a positive and like lasting impression to everyone you encounter. So really making sure that you build these positive relationships and yeah, because Indian country is so tiny. And then Michaelan, if you wanted to go to the next slide, please. And then so I'll just touch on the tips and strategies a bit. So federal internships and jobs are highly competitive and the application process can be very complex. So working closely with the USDA Federal Pathways team, I learned an abundance of knowledge surrounding tips and tricks while applying for federal internships and jobs. Because I was unfamiliar how specific federal government applications are. And like it when I say you have to put down everything, like you put down the time, like the hours you work in your work, if you're part-time or full-time, your pay, what you do, it's very specific. And I did not know that. It's such a complex application process. So some of the tips I would say is familiarizing yourself with USDAjobs.gov. So that's the only application website that you will use to apply for federal positions. So being able to navigate it and truly understand it. So creating a strong profile, ensuring that your profile is complete with accurate details about your skills, education, and work experience. And then also saving job searches. So set up email alerts for relative job openings. And then using USDA job resume format, so tailoring your resume to meet federal requirements, listing your experiences with clear dates, titles, and accomplishments. And then kind of going off of that, so tailoring your resume to a job announcement. This is such an important tip for that. Make sure that your you kind of want to tweak your resume every time you apply for a different federal position. So you'll see keywords in applications and making sure that if they align with what you do, you kind of rewrite your resume, not copying word for word, but making sure that you match your resume to the job description. So highlighting qualifications that directly align with the job's responsibilities, using job specific keywords, incorporating key phrases from the job posting to help your resume pass through the applicant tracking system. And then also providing detailed examples, like using metrics, examples that demonstrate your impact. So being very specific to that job announcement, and then also follow instructions carefully and pay attention to detail in the application process. So read the application announcement thoroughly, read all instructions precisely to avoid disqualification, because they're very specific for who can apply to jobs. So making sure that you take the time to truly read out if you meet the criteria, if the job announcement is for you, because it'll say for the public, for Native Americans, for veterans. So it's very specific on, or career transfer. So it's very specific on who can apply. And then also providing required documents. So, and highlighting specific achievements, like in your resume or cover letter, focus on measurable results and how you have excelled in your past roles. And then write a strong customized cover letter. So be specific and tailored. Cover letters usually aren't required, but they're optional, but they always recommend that you do write a cover letter because these are real people that look through your federal application. So making sure to be specific and tailored, so address how your experiences and qualifications fit this position, highlight relative experiences, and then keep it concise. So limit your cover letter to one page, focusing on key points. And then also understanding veterans and American Indian preferences, especially if you're Indigenous. So if you look at the preferences, if they have preferences, you'll be able to gain specific or extra points, which helps you become more competitive in the systems. And then providing that documentation that proves that you are a veteran or an American Indian. And then highlight relative academic experiences for internships. Academic qualifications are key. So highlighting coursework, research projects, or relevant academic experiences. And then also showcase transferable skills. So emphasizing any skills from volunteer work, leadership roles, or extracurricular activities that align with the internship. And then utilizing resources and tools, federal internship programs such as like Pathways internship offer clear way into pathways to federal employment. So Pathways, I believe, is for graduate. I'm actually not too sure, but you'll have to work at least 3 months in a federal position, and then you have to gain an X amount of hours, and then from that you're able to transfer from internship into employment. So you become less competitive, and so that kind of helps open the door for federal positions. And then also they have another good program for graduate students. So it's called the Presidential Management Fellowship. And with that, it's for graduate students. And then also you have up to 2 years after graduate school. And then with that, you're able to do a fellowship under a federal organization for I think minimum of 2 years, and then with that you're able to transfer into the federal government into an employment status. You are able to receive the benefits of a federal employment or employee, so you're able to do pay scale. So they'll pay you if you're a graduate student or have a graduate student degree. You're able to start off at a GS 11, I believe, up to 13, and then you'll continue to build up your pay scale grade. And then whenever you transfer in, it just makes it a lot easier to get into federal positions because it's not as competitive as going with or against the public. So those are some really good internship programs that I would recommend that you look into if you are interested in becoming a federal employee and you are maybe questioning what you're going to do after graduation. And then also the USA Jobs resources, so taking advantage of tutorials, help guides, and application tips when available on USDA.gov to help strengthen your submission. And then that is all that I have for you. Oh, and I forgot about my recommendations as well. So there are so many opportunities that we are unaware of, and taking time to really search the web can be a great start. So from my experience, I would suggest searching up keywords that you are interested in, signing up for emails from your favorite nonprofits, organizations, fellowships, what have you. I think those are really great ways to kind of see what is out there for internships, fellowships, and even positions. Reaching out to your contacts and connections and or places that you're interested in, and kind of just seeing what's available as well. Whenever you start calling people, people will remember you, and so you can help build those relationships. So people are willing to help more than we realize that they are. So just using those advocacy skills and putting yourself out there. But yeah, that's all that I have for you guys. Thank you so much for joining. Did anyone have any questions? And if you guys ever wanted to chat too about, the federal government, internships or positions, things like that, I am available, or, about my internship experience, my application process, which I know that it has closed. It just closed on the 22nd, I believe. So it closed a lot earlier this year, but if you are interested in joining for next year, I'd be willing to help in any capacity. So yeah, please feel free to reach out as well.
Cool. Do we have any questions? Looks like Dr. Strand has one.
This is so inspiring. And I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about where in the MPH program, like at what level in the program or in what setting, we can promote these opportunities better. Sometimes right out of the gate, the students are not ready to think about this because they're trying to figure out how do I even pass my class or whatever.
Yeah.
And then when it gets to be last semester, they're sort of on an ILE or working toward finishing and getting a job or something. How can we better promote these opportunities in the program based on your experience? Like when and how, because I think it's such a tremendous opportunity. This is so inspiring, and yet so few students pursue these opportunities.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. I mean, I completely agree that sometimes, I mean, just thinking for myself and how I was, the last semester, I was very uncertain about my future, but also really overwhelmed and feeling burnt out from, the graduate program. And so it is tough because applications usually close by the start of like spring semester, or, the beginning. So being able to apply before that obviously is great. So I don't I don't know if I necessarily have the answer to when would be the best time, but I think maybe providing that in courses, I don't know, just letting people know, because I mean, granted, I was the first cohort of this, so I didn't know that this program even existed, but now that I do, I let everyone know just because I had found it by luck on Google. So, and it just happened to work out that, I got the internship and I was able to do something for the summer and things like that. But, yeah, I would say maybe just letting students know as the opportunities present itself would probably be best, but it is hard whenever you know that students are burnt out towards the end of the semester. So I agree.
But it sounds like maybe October, November of their second year might be a time to, especially if they're closing in like late November,
Mhm.
mid-November, for either the following spring or summer opportunities. And I'll put a note to myself to do that. That's great.
Yeah, yeah, no, for sure. I definitely think maybe, I mean, it could just be spreading the word and having them look at it, just making sure that they're aware of that these opportunities are available. So that just might be the best solution or way for it. But yeah, thank you for that question.
Okay, any more questions? We do have a few minutes left to spare, so don't be shy. I see Angela's got her camera off. No, she probably gets enough of us.
No, this was really good. And I don't know that's a question, but I look forward to seeing how we can integrate this in actually with what you're doing,
Yeah.
with IFSO and maybe recruiting people that we bring into the cohorts to be potentially part of what your experience was. So,
Yeah. I know that some of the IFSEL cohort one, because Lisa Yellowbird had sent an email saying like, hey, can you send this out to your contacts? So I had sent it out to the IFSEL cohort one. And then I had one participant, she had reached out and said that she had applied and things like that. So I was like, oh, that
that's
is so,
fantastic.
yeah, I was like, that is so great. So hopefully, this is the start of their food sovereignty journey as well. Kind of getting them interested with our NDSU program and then also like helping them along their career with the internship. And so it was really great to hear that as well.
Like Akua might have her hand up.
Hi, thank you for this presentation. I think I've learned a lot from it, but I also wanted to find out if international students are welcome to apply for these internships.
Yeah, yeah. So for this program, I know that there were a few non-tribal students that had applied and that were selected for our internship. I think our cohort was around 32 people, and I think there was a few that were selected that were non-tribal. So I mean, everyone is encouraged to, they're able to apply. But also the USDA has so much internships, like the PMF, the Presidential Management Fellowship, and then the pathways as well. Those are open for anybody if you meet the criteria of PMF of graduate. So after you graduate with your MPH, you're able to apply for that. But the pathways you're able to apply for as well. So those are open for everyone as, also. But
Okay,
there's,
thank you.
I was like, there's so much internship opportunities there too. If you ever had the chance to look. So yeah,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
So I have a quick question for you, Tahni, not that you'll necessarily have an answer, but maybe Michaela or Maeve or Lauren, some of our former students. This is such an exciting opportunity, great opportunity. And yet not very many students are attending this presentation today to learn about these great opportunities. Do you have thoughts on how we might, I know Dr. Strand was asking about like when, but how do we get students to actually come listen and hear and learn about some of these great opportunities?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it's also has to do with maybe that it was on Zoom as well. I know that maybe incentivizing it a little bit. Like this used to work for me when I was in like graduate or undergrad, when I was going to school in person, and they would have like a lunch and learn, and then they would feed you at the same time, because I feel like college students always want food, which is, it's real. But I think that could be a really great way to maybe help engage students as well. Yeah, but that is a little bit harder. I know that, graduate students are very busy, especially ones that work full-time positions and have families, going through the MPH program. I know that there was only a handful of us that actually were able to just focus on school by itself. So I think that also plays a role. So maybe timing as well, maybe doing like later seminars to maybe help accommodate. Or maybe bringing the speakers into classrooms and having them, take 20 minutes out of their after or, evening to kind of speak to the students. And so those might be some opportunities.
I think that's really helpful. And I know I learned a lot today. So thank you so much for such a wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I did want to point out Tahni's sister, Sunny, is a special guest today. She did have a question in the chat. Does the program provide housing? If not, how did you navigate this?
Yeah, so that was actually really stressful because they did not provide housing. So if any students were interested in applying for the intern, I know that this was one of the biggest feedbacks that we had would be to apply or to provide housing with the internship. But I was able to secure housing, I mean, like a week before I had left. So that's how housing is very limited in DC. But I found that like going on Facebook, groups, pages, things like that were specific to the DC area, because a lot of students will sublease their apartments for the summer. I just happened to get lucky as one of the USDA workers had a friend that was leaving for the summer, and so she, personally offered it to me, and said like, hey, like I'm leaving for the summer, can you watch my apartment and also watch my cat? So that was kind of one of the things that I had to do for her. But housing was not provided, so I would recommend, if you were selected for an internship in DC, it doesn't even have to be this one. If they don't provide housing, that should be number one on your list to prioritize and find as soon as you can, because the closer you get into the summer, the less limited housing is. So, and housing is very expensive. So do not be surprised when you're paying, close to $2,000 a month for a 1-bedroom apartment. But the good thing about this program as well is they did offer us a really great stipend. So we had stipend that covered, our time, and then stipend that covered our housing, our travel. So I think we got a total of $12,500 for all of that. So it was really great that, we were provided that, and that helped with our housing, housing accommodations as well.
Hi, Tahni. So good to see you.
Hi, it's so good to see you
sharing.
too.
Yeah. So my question is, how did this experience in your internship, like how did it land with you in your public health, like dreams and goals for a career? And did it maybe like move you or inspire you to like take on a certain tract or to work for the federal government or maybe work back home? Just like where is your kind of, where did that internship take you as far as like goals or career choices?
Yeah, great question. Thank you. Yeah, so I had mentioned earlier that it was a really big full circle moment. I was able to, do the internship, and then I now work for NDSU, the American Indian Public Health Resource Center, and I work under the grant that the same USDA team that I worked with, that they now fund the grant that I work under. So it really helped, align with my public health interests. So it really just kind of solidified that I was interested in food sovereignty, food security, making that more accessible, things like that. So I had knew that I was very passionate about that. So I think finding a position that really aligned with my goals was great. And then kind of just thinking, how can I take this internship and then, turn it into something positive in my tribal community and take what I've learned and also help in that way. And then for the federal government, I think that's so interesting because I kind of went in the internship with kind of a critical lens, because I think as an Indigenous person, sometimes there's a really big trust within federal government just because, of the historical traumas and things like that. So I was kind of like, I don't know what they're doing. Like, let me go check it out type of thing. But, just learning about, how they're working with tribal communities and how there's kind of a shift to, and rightfully so, to allow tribal communities to kind of navigate how they want federal dollars to be spent, how they want to see their community thriving, making those really big, important decisions, and how the federal government can play more of a backseat role and letting the tribes dictate how they do that. So I think that was really interesting. And then also I did notice that there is a need for tribal representation. So the Office of Tribal Relations, I think there's like a team of 9, and maybe half of them are Indigenous. So, I know that they want to expand because they had started off as an office as like 2 or 3 people, I think, at the beginning of President Biden's term. So it just continues to grow. So there is definitely need for tribal representation. So I was really interested in working for the federal government. I had applied for federal positions. I wasn't able to, I wasn't selected for those positions, but I was very interested in that as well. So I think kind of having a clearer understanding of how the federal, well, at least USDA is operating now, they can be such a good partner as well. So that's kind of what I learned in that, and one of my biggest takeaways as well.
I think to kind of add on to that question, after listening to some of the barriers that you faced, like with housing or similar barriers, does that kind of guide how you're planning for the next IFSELP cohort, like trying to eliminate some of the barriers that you experienced and making our program more accessible for the Indigenous students? I noticed one of the things that we do is provide housing, and we made sure that it was as accessible as possible to get these students here, considering the communities that they come from and their financial backgrounds, their socioeconomic statuses. So I just like to see it. Is that kind of helping you frame the way that you're planning the program, I guess?
Yeah, I would definitely say so. I think having those lived experiences and really understanding what it's like to be in an internship or an intern, position as well. And like you had mentioned, the barriers, um, especially as a graduate student, I have a little bit more bills, I want to say, maybe anyways. So making sure that I had a stipend that I was able to live off of and that would support my financial needs as well. And I think that IFSELP does a great job at providing that as well. So making sure that, our students are taken care of. I know that, some of our conversations that you guys had, and maybe for the future is, providing daycares and, things like that for students that are non-traditional, so that they're able to apply and, can attend these programs. So making sure that we're accommodating for Indigenous, students, and then also families as well. But yeah, thank you for that question.
Awesome, thank you.